Him is one of the latest horror movies to be released, and this was definitely a strange one. What sounded like an interesting concept centered around what it takes to be a GOAT in your field, the almost cult-like environment that athletes can be thrown into, and the almost breaking of an individual so they can be focused on that one particular thing was a concept that was interesting. However, its execution is something that just fell a little bit short. It was a bit too Ryan Murphy American Horror Story for its own good, and I think that made the message just get a little bit diluted, and the over-the-top nature of it is what ultimately went on to cost it. With deeper themes embedded within it, let's take a look at the movie, explain the ending, answer what it truly means, and I'll share if it's worth watching. Here is him ending explained the deeper meaning and a review of the movie. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The deeper meaning. This movie had a couple of deeper meanings embedded within the story which cut through. The first one was focused on the position and idea of a GOAT in a sport, the journey to becoming one, and how it feels when they get to the back end of their career. For example, Isaiah White was the GOAT of the Saviors and had been for several years. However, with the up-and-coming Cade, he was facing the prospect of no longer being the quarterback for the Saviors and retiring at the end of the season. This was something that Isaiah wasn't willing to just let happen because he enjoyed everything that came with being considered to be a GOAT. The fame, the riches, the lifestyle, the attention, the paparazzi, the fans, the women, and even the ability to get away with what you wanted. Something which was a darker side to that fame, which I felt was shown to us when the fan died and he made out like he didn't know what happened. The fact that he was always going to watch tapes showed that he couldn't give up that position, and he was almost fearful of what his life would be like after his career ended, because, as he said, it was football, family, and then God when it came to his priorities, rather than family before football like Cameron. So he had no life, hence why he was prepared to fight to the death for it. If he won, he'd continue as the quarterback, and if he didn't, then he'd just end up dead. Some other deeper themes that were explored throughout this movie were focused on the family pressure of developing within a sport, and how they can give up a lot, want the best for you, and then you could ultimately feel like you owe it to them because of the sacrifices that they made. This was present with Cam due to his father taking him to training all the time when he was younger and wanting him to become a professional football player, or for Cam to tell him that he no longer wanted to do it, and then a few months later his father dying. So he was only pursuing a career as a footballer so he could honour his father's dream for him, showing that many do go through with it because of the pressure of others rather than a passion within themselves. We also saw the pressures that come along with being given the GOAT status. For example, there were the haters and the obsessed individuals, which were the likes of the lady who kept saying to Cam how they didn't want him. But then there was also the suffocating nature of the paparazzi, which was shown to us with them popping out of the blue and then being right there in front of him, and it quite literally suffocating him. Cam saw a lot of the bad things within this world because he didn't truly want to be a part of it, which connects back to quite early on in the movie when his phone was going off and it was as if he wasn't present in the room. So this showed that whilst the many fans, such as the blonde woman and those that were waiting, think the idolized state of a GOAT is something that many would want, we saw that there are a lot of pressures and risks that come with it, and it's not the dream like everybody thinks it would be. Arguably, one of the most important deeper themes that was explored in this movie was the fact that many of these professional contracts were like signing a deal with the devil, which is why there was this satanic higher power that ended up killing Cam's manager right at the end of the movie. These deals showed that if they signed the contract, then they almost became a commodity of the higher-ups, that they could essentially do what they wanted to with the players and continue to profit off of them in any way that they pleased. That's exactly how Isaiah ended up in the position that he was in when he first turned into the GOAT that he was. They made out like it wasn't down to hard work and dedication, but it was down to grooming and eventually being given the opportunity after making the right decisions and just going along with it. So it painted the industry, the way that it operates, and the ownership as these figures that essentially play God and have the ability to make a figure that somebody would worship. Hence why Cam was almost portrayed as Jesus, the Messiah, on occasions. The ending explained. When it came to the ending of this movie, we saw that the reveal finally happened, and it turned out that the blood that Isaiah White was feeding into Cam was being done so that Cam could have the blood of all of the previous GOATs that came before him inside of him. This is how Isaiah got over his injury so quickly, and also why he was considered the GOAT. It wasn't talent, it was ritualistic and supernatural. With Cam being given the blood, it meant that Isaiah was about to go toe-to-toe in the Colosseum with the up-and-coming warrior, and only one would walk out victorious. And with Cam now having the blood inside of him, it put them on a level playing field. The tape of the crowd up above made the room out to be like a Colosseum as well, tying into what Marco said earlier on in the movie. White's contract was up at the end of the year, and the Saviors were looking to either re-sign him or sign a new quarterback, which was said to be Cam. However, there could only be one chosen one GOAT, hence why they were now basically fighting to the death. During their battle, we saw that Cam ultimately ended up being the victor, showing that he was in fact him, like his father had always said that he was going to be. The final line of dialogue that Cam said to Isaiah was that the opposite to a savior was a mascot, and Isaiah was the mascot in this instance. This tied back into the story from earlier on in the movie, which was focused on the history of a quarterback, which Isaiah said was a position that was deep-rooted into Native Americans, but it was forgotten with time, and with time, they became the mascots of football teams. So in this instance, with Isaiah being referred to as a mascot, it showed that he'd be forgotten with time as well, because he was now the GOAT. When Cam emerged from the tunnel and walked into the light, the owner of the Saviors was there, along with the likes of Tom and Elsie. They were trying to make him sign a deal with the devil to be the new Saviors quarterback and ascend this new position as being the GOAT. And with the weapon that was used on him at the start of the movie being present there, it showed that everything that he'd gone through was orchestrated by them. This also tied into the name of the team, the Saviors, almost acting like they were saving Cam from a life that he never even truly got to experience. They mentioned how he didn't achieve any of that by himself, and they almost implied that his father was a part of this deal which enabled him to grow within the sport, and that killing him would ultimately go on to be his inspiration too. So the industry's influence and touch points were far and wide if there was something that they wanted. Cam ultimately killed everybody that was in front of him after refusing to sign the deal, and after he was threatened with his family being killed, that was what triggered him. Family was always more important to him than football, so with them threatening the thing that he cared about most, that's what made him want to take them all on. The phrase, "no guts, no glory," came to mind, and he had the guts to walk away from the deal and instead kill everybody there, quite literally spilling guts on the floor in order to prevent others from being exploited, like how he once was. The ending shone a light on the exploitative nature of areas of the sports industry, how it's difficult to walk away when you're quite literally offered riches beyond your wildest dreams and a life that could bring you a fabricated sense of eternal happiness. My review of the movie. If I'm being honest, I think the movie is a little bit of a mess. It says a lot, but it just executes it in a way which feels quite disruptive to watch. It's quite erratic in terms of its style, and that's something that ultimately goes against it. Whether that be the almost up-and-down performance from Marlon Wayans, the strange X-ray style shots that we'd have, or even the weird close-ups of blood and gore which just reminded me of American Horror Story. That's honestly the best way I'd describe it. It's something like Ryan Murphy would almost make. So whilst it felt like there was a really interesting message that was at the core of the movie that could have been explored well, it just didn't quite cut through, which I think is a shame. In terms of the gore that occurred in the final few minutes, I just think it got a bit ridiculous. It almost became a bit animated, and it went beyond just having a shock factor. I was taken out of the situation, and I got it was supposed to be a bit supernatural and strange, but for me, it just didn't quite do it. In terms of the performances, Tyriq Withers carried the role well, and I felt that confused mindset that he had and the lack of certainty around what was going on, but also what to do, so he did a great job. Plus, I'd also say Marlon Wayans' performance was one that was quite creepy, and even though it was erratic, you can tell that that was the direction that he was told to go with, so I understand why it was like that. In terms of the runtime, that was something that it had going for it, because it was around an hour and a half, and it did manage to get everything across in that short time frame. If anything, it felt like it was a bit longer than that, so they did manage to squeeze more than a surface level story into quite a short runtime. Jordan Peele's involvement doesn't feel that large in this at all, but I don't know that for certain. Peele's movies feel a bit more thought-provoking than this, so I wonder if the name is just attached because everybody knows how good his horrors are, so it could just be a marketing play. When it comes to if this movie's worth a watch or not, for me, I'm not going to watch it again. I think it had good intentions with the message that it wanted to get across, but it just falls short in its execution, and the powerful nature of it gets lost because of the over-the-top animated nature of it all. I liked the whole idea of two gladiators entering the Colosseum and only one being victorious, whilst also having a GOAT that was unable to give up the fame, attention, and love for the game. There's definitely something powerful in that, but him is definitely not that. So, there you have it. Him ending explained, the deeper meaning and a review of the movie.